The first mistake was thinking every black car looked the same in the rain. The second was opening his door. I was 27 years old, soaked through my thrift store coat, holding a bouquet of white roses I should have left at the hotel desk 10 minutes earlier. The card tied to the stems was still burning a hole in my mind, even though I had read it only once. For the woman who should have stayed buried. People with money had strange ways of being cruel, I told myself. Rich widows, angry ex-wives, men who sent flowers instead of apologies. As a delivery girl in Chicago, I had learned not to ask questions. Questions did not pay rent. Questions did not fix a cracked phone screen. Questions did not stop the library from cutting my daytime hours and leaving me to run flowers across the city after dark. But that night, outside the Halston Grand Hotel, with the rain turning the sidewalk silver and the wind pushing hard off the river, I felt something I could not explain. Someone was watching me. Two men stood under the awning across the street, both in dark coats, both pretending not to look. One had a phone pressed to his ear. The other had his hands in his pockets. But his eyes stayed on me like I was an address he had been sent to collect. My rideshare app said my driver had arrived. Black Lincoln. Plate ending in 41K. The battery on my phone blinked red at 3%. I saw a black car pull to the curb half a block away, engine running, windows tinted so dark they swallowed the streetlights. Close enough, I thought. That was how ordinary disasters began. Not with thunder. Not with a warning. Just a tired woman making one small choice because she was cold, scared, and out of time. I hurried to the car, opened the back door, and slid inside before the men across the street could move. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Not air freshener. Not stale fast food like most rideshares. Leather. Rainwater. Something clean and expensive, like cedar and smoke trapped in a tailored suit. The second thing I noticed was silence. The driver did not ask for my name. The man beside me did not look surprised. He sat in the shadows, tall and still, one hand resting on his knee, a silver watch catching the city light for half a second before darkness took it back. I froze with my hand still on the door handle. "I'm sorry," I said. My voice sounded too small. "Wrong car." The man turned his head slowly. He had dark blonde hair, cut short, a sharp face, and pale gray eyes that made me feel like every lie I had ever told had just become public record. He did not smile. He did not reach for me. Somehow that made him worse. "Claire Whitman," he said, calm as church bells at midnight. "You're not supposed to be here." My heart forgot its rhythm. I had not told him my name. I pulled the handle. Nothing happened. I pulled again, harder this time. The lock gave a soft, final click, and the car began to move. "Open the door," I said, trying not to panic and failing. He glanced past me through the rain-streaked window. The two men from the awning were already running toward the curb. "I locked the doors," he said, "because if I didn't, they would have opened yours." The car did not speed away like in the movies. It moved with quiet control, sliding into traffic as if the rain, the red lights, and the two men behind us all obeyed the same invisible command. That scared me more than panic would have. Panic was human. This was practiced. I turned in my seat and watched the hotel shrink through the back window. The men reached the curb too late. One lifted his phone. The other stared straight at the car, and even through the water on the glass, I felt the message in his face. He knew he had missed me, but he also knew where to look next. "Who are they?" I asked. The man beside me did not answer right away. He studied me the way librarians study damaged books, careful not because they are gentle, but because they know one wrong touch can tear the page. "That is what I am trying to find out. You know my name?" My voice cracked on the last word, and I hated myself for it. "You know who I am, and I am supposed to believe you are the safe option?" His eyes shifted to the bouquet crushed against my coat. The white roses had begun to bruise at the edges, their petals turning soft and gray from the rain. "Where did you get those?" "I delivered them." "To whom?" "Room 1214 at the Halston Grand." No one answered, so the front desk signed for them. His jaw tightened almost too slightly to notice. "Almost." "And the card?" I looked down. The little cream envelope was still tied with a thin black ribbon. My fingers felt numb as I pulled it free. I read it by accident. "Nothing about tonight was an accident, Miss Whitman. Do not call me that like we are in a bank." For the first time, something changed in his face. Not amusement exactly. Recognition, maybe. Like I had sounded like someone he remembered. I held the card out, but he did not take it. He only nodded toward it. Read it. I already did. Read it again. The driver's eyes flicked to the mirror. The car was warm, but my hands were shaking so badly the envelope whispered against my palm. I opened it and forced the words out. For the woman who should have stayed buried. The silence after that was not empty. It was crowded with things he was not telling me. What does that mean? I asked. It means someone wanted me to see you carrying them. Wanted you to see me? Yes. Why? He finally looked at me fully. Because your mother used to receive white roses before every threat. The world seemed to tilt under the tires. My mother had been dead since I was 9. That was the clean version, the version my aunt told me when she tucked me into a twin bed in a house that never felt like mine. A rainy highway. A tired driver. Bad brakes. A tragedy with paperwork. I had built my whole life around that explanation because children believe adults when the truth is too heavy to hand them. You do not know anything about my mother, I said. Her name was Evelyn. My breath stopped. Evelyn Whitman. He continued, softer now, and that softness was worse than the locked doors. She wore a blue coat the night she saved my life. My throat burned. Outside, Chicago blurred into streaks of gold and black. Inside, a stranger with dangerous eyes had just opened a grave I had spent 18 years trying not to visit. Who are you? I whispered. He looked ahead, toward a city that suddenly felt full of hidden rooms. Adrian Cross, he said. And I have owed your family the truth since before you were old enough to ask for it. Adrian Cross. The name landed in the car like a glass dropped in a quiet room. I had heard it before, but never from anyone who said it directly. In Chicago, his name lived in lowered voices, in newspaper articles that used words like businessman and private investor because they could not prove anything darker. Cross Holdings owned restaurants, parking garages, construction firms, and half the old brick buildings along the river where people like me could never afford to live. At the library, his company logo was on a plaque near the new children's wing, polished brass under soft lights. I had dusted that plaque on Tuesday. Now the man behind it was sitting beside me, telling me my dead mother had saved his life. Pull over, I said. No, I said pull over. And I said no. His voice did not rise, which made my own fear feel loud and messy. You cannot just take me somewhere because you know my mother's name. I can when the men behind us were sent to find you. You do not know that. Adrian reached into the inside pocket of his coat. I flinched before I could stop myself. He noticed. His hand paused, then moved slower. What he pulled out was not a weapon. It was a folded photograph, worn soft at the edges, protected in a clear sleeve. He held it between 2 fingers and offered it to me. Look, I did not want to. That was the truth. Some part of me understood that if I looked, my life would divide into before and after. But my hand moved anyway. The photograph showed a younger Adrian, maybe 17 or 18, standing beside a woman in a blue wool coat outside a diner I recognized from old family pictures. Her hair was the same shade as mine, light brown with a wave she never knew how to tame. Her smile was tired but real. My mother, Evelyn Whitman, alive in a moment I had never been given. My chest tightened until breathing felt like pushing through a locked door. Where did you get this? She gave it to me. Why would she? Give you a picture of herself? Because she knew there might come a day when her daughter would need proof. The word daughter almost broke me. I looked out the window because I refused to let him watch my face fall apart. We were crossing the LaSalle Street Bridge, the river below black and restless, reflecting office lights like broken gold. The city looked normal. Couples under umbrellas. A bus sighing at the curb. A man walking a dog in a yellow raincoat. Ordinary life kept moving, completely unaware that mine had just been quietly unmade in the back of a car. My aunt said she died in an accident. I whispered. That is what she was told to say. By who? Adrian's silence answered before his mouth did. Someone powerful. Someone close enough to rewrite grief into paperwork. My stomach turned cold. Why are you telling me this now? Because white roses means someone has reopened what your mother tried to bury. Stop saying that. My voice sharpened. Stop talking about her like she was part of your world. She was a kindergarten teacher. She packed my lunches. She sang off-key in the kitchen. She was not some secret in a file. Adrian looked at me then, and for the first time, the hardness in his eyes did not feel like threat. It felt like restraint. No, he said. She was better than my world. That is why it destroyed her. The car turned off the main road and entered an underground garage beneath a limestone building with no sign out front. The gate lowered behind us with a heavy mechanical hum. I hated that sound. It felt too final. Where are we? A safe apartment. Safe for who? For you. You keep using that word like it belongs to you. The driver parked near a private elevator. Adrian opened his door, then stopped and looked back at me. He did not reach for my arm. He did not order me out. He pressed a button, and my door unlocked with a soft click. You can run, he said. But if you do, run through the north exit, stay under cameras, and do not go home. I stared at him. Why would you unlock it now? His answer came quietly, almost painfully. Because your mother saved me by giving me a choice. I will not repay her by taking away yours. I did not run. I wanted to. Every instinct in my body pointed toward the north exit, toward cameras, toward air that did not smell like leather seats and secrets. But my legs stayed still because the photograph was still in my hand, and my mother's face was looking up at me from a life I had never been allowed to remember correctly. Adrian stepped out first and waited beside the open door, rainwater shining on the shoulders of his black coat. The garage lights were pale and flat, the kind that made everything look unfinished. Concrete walls, security cameras, a private elevator with no buttons except a small black panel. Nothing here felt like safety. It felt like money trying very hard not to be noticed. I need my phone, I said. It died. There is a charger upstairs. That is not what I meant. He understood. Of course he did. Men like Adrian Cross survive by hearing the thing underneath the thing. You can call whoever you trust. I trusted my aunt, I said, and hated the bitterness in my own voice. Apparently that did not help. Something passed through his eyes, quick and quiet. Regret, maybe. Or the older cousin of regret, the kind that already knows apologies are too small. The elevator opened without a sound. I got in because the alternative was standing in a garage at midnight with nowhere safe to go and a dead woman's photograph shaking in my hand. Adrian stood on the opposite side, leaving more space than the elevator required. I noticed that. I also noticed the camera above us, the polished steel doors, the way his reflection looked colder than the real man. Why would someone send those roses now? I asked. Because a hearing starts in 72 hours. What hearing? A federal review into a construction collapse from 18 years ago. My stomach tightened. The same year my mother died. Yes. The elevator rose so smoothly I barely felt it. Officially, the collapse was blamed on a contractor who disappeared before trial. Unofficially, your mother had evidence that the report was altered. My mother was a teacher. She was also the only person who saw a payment ledger she was never supposed to see. The doors opened. Into a quiet apartment high above the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed Chicago blurred by rain, all silver streets and red brake lights far below. There were no family photos, no bright colors, just dark wood, soft lamps, and furniture that looked expensive enough to make sitting down feel like a mistake. Adrian crossed to a side table and opened a drawer. He took out a charger and placed it on the counter, then stepped back. Again, no grabbing, no crowding. Just control disguised as distance. I plugged in my phone with hands that still did not feel like mine. If my mother had evidence, why did she not go to the police? She tried. And he looked toward the window. The wrong people answered first. A chill moved through me that had nothing to do with rain. My phone lit up at 1%, then 3, then 5. Notifications flooded the cracked screen. Missed calls from the flower shop. A message from my aunt asking if I got home. Another from an unknown number with no name, no greeting, just 6 words. Give back what Evelyn stole. I stopped breathing. Adrian saw my face and crossed the room in 3 strides, then stopped himself before coming too close. Show me. I turned the screen toward him. His expression did not change, but the air around him did. It sharpened. They think I have something, I whispered. Do I? Adrian's gaze dropped to the photograph in my hand. Not yet. That is not an answer. Your mother placed something in storage before she died. I never found it. My laugh came out thin and wrong. Storage? My mother left me library cards, recipe books, and a music box that does not play. She did not leave me some secret evidence box. Adrian looked at me then, and his voice lowered. Claire, did she ever use another name? The question should have sounded impossible. Instead, it opened a tiny locked room in my memory. My mother at our kitchen table, writing on a brown envelope. My small hand reaching for it. Her smile too quick. Her voice too gentle. Some names are for keeping people safe, sweetheart. I backed away from the counter. Rose Bennett, I said. She used to write that name on old envelopes. Adrian went completely still. What? Rose Bennett. I thought it was a friend. His face changed, not with fear, but with the terrible focus of a man watching the last missing piece slide into place. Outside, thunder rolled over the city. Inside, Adrian said the name like it was a door opening beneath us. That was not her friend, Claire. That was the name she used when she hid the truth. Rose Bennett. The name sat between us like a match held too close to paper. I had not spoken it out loud in years, maybe because some childhood memories know how to hide from grief until the wrong person asks the right question. My mother used to write that name in blue ink on envelopes she kept above the refrigerator, tucked behind the flour and sugar like secrets belonged with ordinary things. When I was little, I thought Rose Bennett was a neighbor or a cousin or one of those friends adults mentioned but never invited over. Now Adrian Cross was looking at me like that name could get us both followed through the rest of our lives. Where are those envelopes? He asked. Gone. Think carefully. I am thinking carefully. My voice snapped, louder than I meant it to. The windows trembled faintly with thunder, and the city below looked like it had been painted in wet black glass. After my mother died, my aunt packed the house in 3 days. She said moving fast would hurt less. It did not. It just made everything disappear before I knew what to ask for. Adrian's jaw tightened. Did she keep anything? My aunt keeps everything that looks sentimental and throws away everything that matters. I walked to the window because I needed distance from his questions, from his stillness, from the way he made the room feel smaller without moving. There was a music box, I said. A wooden one. It had a rose carved on the lid. Adrian turned fully toward me. Do you still have it? Yes. Where? At my apartment. His answer came too quickly. You cannot go back there. I faced him. Do not start giving orders again. Claire, the message on your phone means they know you are connected to Evelyn. If they have not been to your apartment yet, they will be. Then I should get there before they do. That is exactly what they expect. And what do you expect? For me to stand here while you send strangers into my home? The word home came out raw. It was a third-floor walk-up with bad plumbing, a radiator that clanged all winter, and a front door that stuck when the weather changed. But it was mine, the last place in the world where my mother's things still breathed. Adrian looked away first. That surprised me. I can have someone retrieve it. No, they would be discreet. No, this is not about pride. You are right. It is about dignity. He went still. I stepped closer, not because I was brave, but because exhaustion can look a lot like courage when a person has nothing left to lose. You do not get to protect me by taking away my choice. My mother may have saved you, but I am not her ghost, and I am not your debt. The silence that followed felt different from the others. Less dangerous. More honest. Adrian lowered his eyes for half a second, and in that tiny surrender I saw the man beneath the name, the boy from the photograph, the one my mother had once pulled out of a nightmare he never fully escaped. You are right, he said. 2 words. No defense. No performance. Somehow that shook me more than if he had argued. He crossed to the kitchen island and picked up a slim black phone. Then we go together. You know what we are looking for. I know how to get you there and back without being seen. That sounds like control with better manners. A faint shadow touched his mouth, not quite a smile. Then give the directions. I did not trust him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I trusted the tremor in my memory, the carved rose on the music box, my mother's voice telling me some names were meant to keep people safe. 20 minutes later, we were in a different car, this one dark blue instead of black. Older, less noticeable. Adrian sat in front this time, leaving me alone in the back with my charged phone and the photograph of my mother. No escort convoy. No dramatic parade of power. Just rain, windshield wipers, and the low murmur of traffic heading north. When my building came into view, my stomach dropped. A light was on. In my apartment. I lived alone. Adrian saw it at the same moment I did. He did not curse. He did not threaten. He simply reached back and held out his hand, palm open, not touching me. Claire, he said quietly, whatever is in that music box, someone else came for it first. My apartment window glowed on the 3rd floor like a warning I had been too late to read. I stared at it from the back seat, my fingers tightening around my phone until the cracked glass pressed into my palm. The light was small, yellow, ordinary. The same lamp I turned on every night because coming home to darkness made the rooms feel emptier than they already were. But I had not turned it on tonight. I had left in a rush that morning with damp hair, coffee on my sleeve, and overdue library notices in my bag. Someone else had touched that switch. Someone else was standing near my mother's music box. "Stay in the car," Adrian said. The softness was gone from his voice, replaced by something flat and controlled. I almost laughed, because fear makes people strange. "You just said I could choose." "I did. Then I choose not to sit here while strangers dig through my life." He turned in the front seat. The rain ran down the windshield in silver threads, cutting his reflection into pieces. "This is not a test of courage, Claire. No, it is a test of whether you meant what you said." That stopped him. For 1 second, his eyes held mine, and I saw the cost of restraint on a man built to command. Then he nodded once. "We go quietly. You do exactly what I say if I tell you to stop. And if I tell you to stop?" His answer came without hesitation. "I stop." We crossed the street under the cover of rain. The sidewalk smelled like wet concrete and old leaves. My building had no doorman, no cameras that worked, no security beyond a buzzer system Mrs. Alvarez on the first floor kept taped open because her grandkids always forgot their keys. Adrian noticed the tape, the broken lock, the blind corner near the mailboxes. I noticed him noticing, and shame burned hot under my fear. I had made a life out of surviving places men like him would call unsafe after one glance. The stairwell light flickered as we climbed. Second floor. Third. My door stood closed, but not right. The frame had a splinter near the latch, a thin pale scar in the painted wood. My throat tightened. Adrian lifted one hand, not touching me, just holding the air between us. "Wait." He listened. I listened too. At first, only the building's usual sounds reached me. Pipes ticking. A television murmuring downstairs. Rain tapping the hallway window. Then came something softer. A drawer sliding shut inside my apartment. My eyes stung. That sound was worse than shouting. Worse than broken glass. It was personal. Someone was touching my drawers, my receipts, my mother's recipe cards, the scarf I still kept because it smelled like cedar when I was a child, and I needed to believe memory could survive laundry. Adrian leaned close enough for me to hear him, but not enough to crowd me. Back 2 steps. I obeyed, hating that I did. He took out his phone and typed a message with one thumb. No drama. No raised voice. No movie moment. Just a man making a room safer before entering it. A moment later, footsteps moved inside. Fast but careful. The lamp switched off. My apartment went dark. Adrian pressed his palm lightly against the door and pushed. It opened an inch. Whoever had been inside had left through the fire escape. I knew because cold air rushed through the gap, carrying the smell of rain and rust. We entered together. My living room looked almost normal, and that made it worse. The couch cushions had been lifted and replaced. Books stood crooked on the shelf. The little ceramic bowl where I kept spare change had been moved 2 inches to the left. Only someone who lived alone would notice that. Only someone with very little would know when little things had been disturbed. I went straight to the bedroom. The closet was open. The shoeboxes were stacked wrong. On the dresser, the wooden music box sat exactly where I had left it, rose carved into the lid, dust gathered in the petals. Relief hit me so hard I nearly reached for it without thinking. Adrian caught my wrist with 2 fingers, gentle but firm. "Do not." I looked at him. "You said you would stop if I told you, and I will. But look first." I followed his gaze. A thin white thread had been tied around the latch, nearly invisible against the pale wood. Not a trap like in a thriller. A signal. A way to know if someone opened it after they left. My skin went cold. Adrian used a handkerchief to lift the thread free, then stepped back. "Your choice," he said. I opened the box. The broken ballerina inside did not spin. The music did not play. But beneath the velvet lining was a brass key taped to a folded library card. On the back, in my mother's handwriting, were 3 words that made the room disappear. "Claire will know. Claire will know." I read the words once. Then again. Then a 3rd time. Because grief can turn 3 simple words into a doorway you are not ready to walk through. My mother's handwriting had always leaned slightly right, like it was trying to hurry toward tomorrow. I remembered it on lunch notes, birthday cards, grocery lists taped to the refrigerator. Seeing it here, hidden beneath velvet in a broken music box, Felt like hearing her call my name from another room. Adrian did not speak. He stood near the dresser, giving the silence room to breathe, and for that 1 minute I almost forgot what he was. Not a boss, not a headline, just a man watching a daughter receive a message 18 years late. I lifted the brass key with trembling fingers. It was small, old-fashioned, stamped with the number 314. The library card beneath it was not from the branch where I worked now. It belonged to the main archive downtown, the old stone building on Washington Street where rare city records were kept in climate-controlled rooms, and half the basement still smelled like dust after rain. On the front was a name typed in faded ink. Rose Bennett. On the back, below my mother's words, someone had written a date. October 6, 2006. The day before she died. My knees weakened, and I sat on the edge of the bed before my body decided for me. She went there the day before the accident. I whispered. Adrian's face tightened at the word accident, but he did not correct me. Maybe he knew I could only lose one lie at a time. Box 314, he said. Archive lockers. I looked up sharply. You know that how? I searched for years and never found it. I did not know the name. Rose Bennett. The name my mother had placed in my childhood like a seed, waiting for me to grow old enough to understand where to dig. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket, and I jumped so hard the key nearly slipped from my hand. Adrian's eyes moved to the screen before mine did. Unknown number again. This time there was no message. Just a photo. My front door from the hallway. Taken minutes ago. Beneath it, 7 words appeared one by one. You should have left the box alone. The room seemed to shrink around me. Rain tapped the fire escape outside my window, soft and patient, like fingers. Adrian stepped toward the window and glanced out through the edge of the curtain. His voice stayed level. We leave now. They are still here. Close enough. I stood, but my legs felt borrowed. If we go to the archive, they will follow us. Yes. If we do not go, they come back. Yes. You have terrible comfort skills. He looked at me then, and the corner of his mouth almost moved. I have been told that. It was absurd, the tiny almost smile in the middle of my ruined apartment, with my mother's secret in my hand and strangers outside my door. But it steadied me. Not because it was charming, because it was human. I slipped the key and library card into the inside pocket of my coat. We are not going to the archive tonight, I said. Adrian's gaze sharpened. Why? Because they expect fear to make me run in the straightest line. I crossed to my bookshelf and pulled down an old city directory, the kind no one used anymore, because phones had made paper maps look foolish. My mother had taught me to read them anyway. Every Sunday when I was little, she would spread one on the kitchen table and ask me to find the long way home. I had thought it was a game. Now I understood it was training disguised as love. The main archive has a staff entrance connected to the records annex, I said. There is a freight hallway under the block. It opens beside the public library loading dock. Adrian studied me like he was seeing me for the first time without my fear in the way. You know the building. I work for the library system. I know every door nobody important uses. He nodded slowly. Outside, something creaked on the fire escape. Not loud, just enough. Adrian moved between me and the window, but he did not tell me to hide. I noticed that too. Then we use your doors, he said. I picked up my mother's photograph from the dresser and held it close. For the first time that night, I did not feel like the girl who had stepped into the wrong car. I felt like the daughter of a woman who had hidden the truth so well that only love could find it. We did not leave through my front door. That was the first choice that felt like mine all night. Adrian listened when I told him the stairwell would be watched, and he did not argue when I pointed to the narrow service hallway behind Mrs. Alvarez's laundry room. Most tenants forgot it existed. Building managers forgot it until something leaked. My mother would have called that useful invisibility. We moved through the back of the building with the lights off, following the smell of detergent, dust, and old brick. My sneakers whispered against the concrete. Adrian's polished shoes made almost no sound, which unsettled me more than if he had been loud. Men like him were not supposed to know how to disappear. Outside, the alley was slick with rain and lined with overflowing trash cans. A cat darted under a fire escape. Somewhere above us, a window slammed shut. Adrian paused at the alley mouth, scanning the street without stepping into the light. 2 cars, he said. One at the corner. One across from your entrance. Then they think I am still inside. For a few minutes. That is all we need. I sounded more certain than I felt. The key pressed against my ribs inside my coat, small and hard, like a second heartbeat. We took side streets south, staying under awnings, cutting through the lobby of an office building whose security guard was too busy watching a basketball replay to notice us. Adrian let me lead. Not in the fake way some men do when they already know the route and only want you to feel included. He truly followed. At every corner, he watched the world I knew through my eyes. The closed bakery with the loose back gate. The pharmacy with a mirror near the ceiling. The bus shelter that reflected traffic better than any window. Your mother taught you this, he said quietly. She taught me games. No, he said. She taught you survival without making you afraid of living. I did not answer because my throat closed around the truth of it. The main archive rose out of the rain just after 1 a.m, all limestone columns and bronze doors, the kind of building that made knowledge look official and grief look small. We did not use the front. I led Adrian around the block to the records annex, where delivery trucks came during the day and city employees smoked during lunch breaks. The loading dock keypad was old. The code had not changed in 3 years because nobody important ever used that door. Inside, the air turned cool and dry. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Metal shelves stretched into the dimness, labeled with dates, districts, permits, public minutes, private mistakes filed in triplicate. I had always loved archives because they were honest in a way people were not. Paper kept what mouths denied. Locker 314 waited in the climate room behind 2 rows of tax records. My hand shook as I slid the brass key into the lock. It turned too easily, as if my mother had opened it yesterday. Inside was a gray document box tied with cotton tape. No jewels. No dramatic envelope. Just a box small enough to hold in both hands and heavy enough to change a life. Adrian did not touch it. Open it, he said. I untied the tape. On top lay a letter addressed to me in my mother's handwriting. Beneath it were photocopied ledgers, inspection reports, photographs of a construction site, and a cassette tape sealed in a plastic sleeve. My eyes stopped on one document stamped with cross holdings, dated 2 days before the collapse. At the bottom was a signature. Not Adrian's. Not his father's. Marcus Cross. Adrian went very still beside me. I remembered the name from old articles, from charity plaques, from the quiet way people spoke of the man who had raised Adrian after his parents died. His uncle. His family. His face hardened, but something behind it broke. He told me it was my father's mistake, Adrian said. The words came out almost soundless. He built my life on that lie. Before I could answer, the lights at the far end of the archive clicked off 1 row at a time. Darkness began walking toward us. The archive did not go dark all at once. That would have been kinder. Instead, the lights died in sections, each click moving closer through the metal shelves like a quiet countdown. First the tax records, then the city permits, then the long row of public meeting transcripts until only the narrow strip above locker 314 remained, humming weakly over our heads. I held my mother's box against my chest and felt every page inside it shift like a living thing. Adrian looked down the aisle, his face unreadable, but I saw his hand close slowly at his side. Not reaching for anything, holding himself back from becoming the first version of himself the world had taught him to be. Service controls are near the loading dock, I whispered. Someone is inside. Yes. Your people. No, that one word was enough. My mouth went dry. The final overhead light flickered. Adrian stepped in front of me, and for once I did not resent it, because he did not make me smaller by doing it. He angled his body so I could still see, still move, still choose. There is another way out, I said. Basement tunnel to the public library. Lead. We moved between shelves as the last light went out. The archive became shapes and breathing and the soft scrape of my sneakers on polished concrete. Behind us, a door opened somewhere. No shout, no rush, just the careful sound of people who expected fear to do their work for them. I knew that kind of power now. It did not always raise its voice. Sometimes it sent flowers. Sometimes it rewrote death certificates. Sometimes it waited 18 years and still believed a daughter would be too scared to read what her mother left behind. We reached the stairwell by touch. Adrian held the door while I slipped through with the box, then followed me down 2 flights into air that smelled like dust, old pipes, and rainwater trapped. Behind stone walls. At the bottom, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I should not have looked, but I did. Leave the box and walk away. Your mother should have done the same. Something inside me went very still. Not calm. Not fearless. Something older than both. I stopped in the tunnel. Adrian turned back. Claire. No, my voice did not shake this time. I am done being moved around by people who think silence is safer than truth. He looked at the phone, then at me. The tunnel light painted one side of his face gold and left the other in shadow. What do you want to do? Not what he planned. Not what he allowed. What I wanted. That question, in that place, felt like the first unlocked door of the night. I opened the document box on a dusty utility table and took out my mother's letter, the ledgers, the inspection report, and the cassette tape. You said there is a federal hearing in 72 hours. Yes. Then we do not hide this in another room. We make copies. Digital copies. Legal copies. Copies that cannot disappear if one man makes one phone call. Adrian studied me for a long second. Marcus has judges, lawyers, police contacts. My mother had a library card. I lifted the key. And somehow, that lasted longer than all of them. For the first time since I had met him, Adrian Cross looked almost humbled. We reached the public library basement through the old staff corridor. I knew the alarm code. I knew which scanner still worked after midnight if you pressed the power button twice. I knew the ancient computer near the genealogy room could upload files to the city server before the network timed out. My hand stopped shaking once I started working. Page after page slid under the scanner light. Evidence became images. Images became files. Files became emails addressed to a federal clerk, an investigative reporter my mother had circled in an old newspaper clipping, and a legal aid attorney who owed me a favor from the library's eviction clinic. Adrian watched from the doorway, guarding without interrupting. When the final upload bar reached 100%, my phone rang. This time the number had a name attached because Adrian had entered it. Himself. Marcus Cross. Adrian's face changed when he saw it, grief sharpening into something dangerous. I answered before he could. You are too late, I said. The line stayed silent for 2 breaths. Then an older man's voice, smooth as polished stone, said, Your mother made the same mistake. I looked at Adrian, at the man my mother had saved, at the boss who was learning that power without conscience was just another locked room. No, I said. Her mistake was thinking the truth needed permission to survive.